You ever walk off a plane just looking for a break, thinking maybe this time, for once, life might just let you exhale, only to get sucker punched by the exact kind of drama you've spent your whole career cleaning up for other people? That's how it started for me. The first whiff of warm southern air, I was just tired, not thinking about investigations or legal codes or power trips. Just a sun coming home. I'd spent 12 years as a federal investigator, put away crooks, untangled conspiracies, built cases that would hold up in court against billion-dollar corporations. But none of that readied me for what I'd face in my parents' own backyard. Yeah, I took a personal leave. Supervisor said go see your folks, you're fried. It's been years. And when I pulled up, all I wanted was to see Dad in the garden, maybe get some cornbread and sweet tea from Mom. That's what I found, but I also found something sour in the air. The old neighborhood had changed. Not just new fences and fresh faces, but new rules. And at the center of it, a woman named Karen who ran the HOA like a queen with a clipboard and a chip on her shoulder. Dad, tough old Army vet, had been getting fined for things that sounded made up: tomatoes, rain barrels, even the way the grass grew after a rain. When I asked, he shrugged it off, but I could see it eating at him. He wasn't the only one. Neighbors whispered about citations, threats, and public shaming, but nobody stood up. It's funny. Power doesn't always show up in a uniform or with a badge. Sometimes it's just a person who decides to bully everyone into silence. And in a small neighborhood, that can be more dangerous than any crime ring. But here's the thing about pushing my dad: you push him, you push me. And that's a line you don't want to cross. Karen tried. First thing in the morning, she showed up on the sidewalk, posture rigid, sunglasses huge, voice clipped as she handed Dad another violation. When she clocked me standing there, she didn't blink, just dialed up the attitude, demanded Dad come to the HOA meeting, threatened fines and liens. Tried to ice me out by saying, "You don't have standing. Ma'am, you don't know the half of it." HOA meeting was a circus. Karen stood up front, flanked by board members who looked like hostages, reading off a list of resident crimes, tomatoes, wind chimes, bird baths. She threatened legal action, forced labor, foreclosure, all with the chilling confidence of someone who's gotten away with it before. I stood up, flashed just enough of my federal credentials to freeze the room, and watched Karen's jaw clench. She called for security, but there wasn't any. Instead, the board started squirming, and the mood in the room turned. That was the first crack in her armor. And then came the twist. After the meeting, a neighbor, Marlene, retired teacher, sharp as a tack, slipped me a note about what Karen was doing to the Reyes family. The Reyes, salt-of-the-earth folks, got hammered with fines for a ramp, a paint color, a shed that had been there longer than Karen's been alive. Threats of foreclosure. "We can't afford a lawyer," Mrs. Reyes said, voice trembling. I took copies of the letters, borderline extortion, plain and simple. I dug deeper, turned up amendments Karen had rammed through the HOA, rules that let her fine people daily, enter private yards, assign, work crews, without consent. She'd weaponized bureaucracy, built a little empire out of fear. And no one pushed back. But I wasn't nobody. I called my old friend Ray, now a detective at the local precinct, asked him to flag Karen's name. He'd had run-ins with her, too. False police reports. Weaponizing city resources, you name it. "You get me something solid," he said, "we'll act." Karen didn't wait. Next morning, she showed up banging on our door, demanding a surprise inspection. Dad, still in slippers, told her to get lost. She snapped back, started typing furiously, and a few hours later, an envelope arrived. 3 violations, including one for hostile interaction with an HOA officer. The kicker? A printed screenshot of an email claiming Dad had threatened her. I told him, "This is a setup." He just shook his head, but the next day, the cops showed up. Now the police. They came because Karen told them Dad had assaulted her with a gardening tool. She stood on the sidewalk, arms folded, smug as hell, watching. But we had security cameras, 4, motion-triggered, covering the whole front yard. I invited the officers inside, played the footage. There it was, start to finish. Dad never raised his voice, never touched her. Cops filed a report against Karen for false reporting. She turned white as chalk. That should have been the end, right? Nope. Karen doubled down, called an emergency HOA meeting to try to get Dad banned from his own house. I wasn't having it. I gathered affidavits, video clips, evidence of her bogus fines, even records showing she'd funneled HOA money to companies registered in her maiden name. The next board meeting, I dumped it all on the table and told them, "You move against my dad, your names go on this file too." People started speaking up. Marlene, Frank, the whole room. A flood of old grievances came pouring out. The board froze all actions. Karen was suspended, and for the first time, neighbors started breathing again. But Karen wouldn't quit. She sent flyers, newsletters, played the martyr, tried to spin herself as a victim of deep state intimidation. She even showed up at the fall block party, marching in with flyers claiming she was persecuted, yelling at anyone who'd listen. But the crowd was done. Someone flipped on the mic so everyone could hear her rant. And then, when a parks officer finally asked her to leave, she stormed off, alone, with the whole neighborhood watching. That was the turning point. The HOA reformed, finances were audited, corrupt policies stripped away. Dad got asked to chair the interim board, not because he wanted power, but because people trusted him. We rewrote the charter together. Fines needed a third-party review. Visual rules got tossed, and the old emergency powers? Gone. Karen tried to lawyer up, tried to sue, but the city and the state opened investigations. Her finances got subpoenaed, and the Oversight Commission barred her from any HOA leadership for a decade. Rumor had it she left town. Maybe Florida, maybe not. Didn't matter. Her spell was broken. You know, as Dad's garden came back, tomatoes and wildflowers and rain barrels in full view, I realized the real win wasn't just getting rid of Karen. It was neighbors knocking on our door to ask how to file complaints, people waving again on their walks, laughter coming back to the block. The rot Karen spread was sunlight. Now, and nobody was hiding anymore. The front lines aren't always a courtroom or a war zone. Sometimes it's a quiet street where one bully thought she could rule by fear, until one person stood up, and then another, and another. Justice doesn't always roar. Sometimes it grows, inch by stubborn inch, like basil under southern sun. So let's hear it. You ever tangled with an HOA tyrant? Did your neighborhood come together or split apart? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Is there ever a right way to run a community, or does power always find a way to go sideways? Like, subscribe, and share if you've ever wanted to rip up a petty violation notice. Let's get this conversation started. Thing is, you never really know when you've reached the end of a fight like this. Some people might tell you, well, Karen's gone, peace is back, case closed. But anyone who's ever lived through neighborhood drama knows, life isn't that tidy. A community is like a garden. You pull one stubborn weed, and another pops up 2 feet away. And, yeah, for a minute, everything felt easier. Dad's garden bloomed. Neighbors waved with real smiles. Kids chalked rainbows on the sidewalk again. But underneath that sunshine, you could still feel nerves twitch when a white SUV crept slow down the block, or when an unfamiliar number popped up on your phone. We didn't hear from Karen for weeks. Rumor mill said she'd gone to Florida, maybe to start over, maybe just licking her wounds. But you could see her fingerprints everywhere, left behind in the bylaws and in the twitchy way some folks still hesitated to plant flowers or hang a wind chime. Dad and we didn't talk much about her, not at first. He just kept to his tomatoes, and I tried to get my head back into work. But a piece of me was always on alert. Call it old habits. Call it growing up with a dad who taught you to trust, but verify. It was about a month later, just after Thanksgiving, that things got weird again. Marlene called, voice low and shaky. You might want to check the HOA Facebook page, she said, and hung up before I could ask more. I scrolled through, and there it was. A long-winded manifesto written by Anonymous, but anyone with half a brain knew who'd penned it. Accusations, veiled threats, and a line that stuck with me. This community deserves strong leadership, not outside interference from federal bullies. You know that feeling when you spot a snake in the grass, even if it's hiding? Yeah, that. For a couple days, it was just digital noise. People bickered online. A few Karen loyalists tried to stir up old drama, but mostly, neighbors ignored it. That changed the day Dad got a certified letter, again. This one wasn't a citation, but a formal summons. Karen, using her last shred of legal leverage, was trying to sue for defamation and intentional emotional distress. She claimed Dad, me, and half the block had orchestrated a witch hunt that destroyed her reputation and cost her untold damages. The words were different, but the motive was the same: fear. She wanted to drag us back to the days when she snapped her fingers and everyone jumped. For a second, I'll admit, I felt that old knot in my stomach. Lawsuits, even the bogus ones, can tie you up for years, bleed your savings, turn neighbors into enemies. But this time, we weren't alone. I posted an update in the new neighborhood group. Not a rant, just the facts, and an invitation for anyone with questions to swing by Dad's house that Saturday. I figured maybe 5 or 6 would show. By noon, there were over 20 people packed into the backyard, holding coffee cups and folding lawn chairs, swapping stories about every slight, every warning letter, every time Karen had made them feel small. And right there, something shifted. Not in the angry, pitchforks and torches way, but in a quiet solidarity, the kind you feel when you realize nobody's fighting alone anymore. Frank, the old mechanic, raised his hand and said, "If she sues you, she sues all of us. We'll file a countersuit. We'll get signatures, affidavits. Whatever you need." Marlene volunteered to reach out to a cousin who worked in local media. Even Darlene, who'd once kept her head down on the board, brought her notepad and started organizing a legal fund, just in case. I knew then, Karen's power was gone, for good this time. Maybe she'd get her day in court. Maybe some lawyer would make noise. But the community she'd ruled by fear was done being scared. Still, she kept swinging. Next week, we got a visit from a process server, a pale young guy in a suit 2 sizes too big, looking apologetic. "Nothing personal, sir. Just my job." I took the packet, thanked him, and watched him drive off. And then I did something I wouldn't have done before all this. I called a meeting, not at City Hall, not at the HOA office, but right there under Dad's maple tree. Neighbors came, some angry, some worried, but all ready to listen. I laid out the lawsuit, explained what it meant, what it didn't. I told them about the evidence we'd gathered, the affidavits, the state investigation already underway. "This isn't just about us," I said. "It's about whether fear runs this place, or we do. Somewhere in the middle of." That meeting, a quiet man I barely recognized stood up. Mr. Carter, 2 houses down, a widower who never spoke at meetings. He cleared his throat, hands shaking, and said, "I've lived here 27 years. I saw what she did to my wife before she passed. If you need me, I'll testify." The air changed after that. You could feel it. The story wasn't just mine anymore, or Dad's. It belonged to everyone. Karen had tried to break. What happened next wasn't some movie ending. No dramatic courtroom confession. No surprise handcuffs in the middle of a meeting. The state commission ruled in our favor. Fast and direct. Karen's civil suit got tossed. The court ordered her to cover part of our legal fees. Word got out. She moved away for real this time, quietly, without the flyers or the drama. House went up for sale, and a young couple with a toddler moved in. First thing they did was hang a wind chime. Funny thing is, life went back to normal in a way I'd almost forgotten was possible. Dad's garden expanded. Neighbors brought seeds, cuttings, tools. We built a bench out by the new community plot, and sometimes in the evening, people would sit together, talk about anything but HOA. Drama. There were disagreements, sure. There always will be. But now, when someone speaks up, people listen. Before I left for DC, Dad handed me a brown envelope full of seed packets, tomatoes, basil, wildflowers, even a couple pepper plants from Mrs. Reyes. "Plant these wherever you go," he said, grinning. "Remind yourself some fights are worth it." So, that's where I'll leave it for now. Maybe you're still in the thick of your own battle. Maybe you just survived one. But if there's one thing I learned, it's this. Community isn't built by rules or bylaws or the loudest person at the microphone. It's built by people willing to show up for each other, in court, in the garden, or in the messiest meeting you've ever sat through. You want change? Sometimes you gotta dig in. Get your hands dirty and plant something new. What about you? You ever stare down a bully and win, or lose, but come out stronger anyway? Drop your story below. Let's trade scars. And if you ever find yourself wondering if it's worth standing up, just remember, every big change starts with one person who finally says enough. Like, comment, share if you believe in second chances, and keep your eyes peeled for the next chapter. Because trust me, in a neighborhood like this, the story's never really over.